Hey there, Hopeful Tribe. Welcome back. So we've talked on this channel before about communication with your partner, but today we're going to talk about how to communicate more effectively with your partner in a relationship.
Yes, on another episode of 3 questions. And our first question about effective communication is, what are some clues that you're communicating clearly with your partner?
So I like to check in with myself as I'm communicating, and also like check in with like what their facial expressions are, what their body language is, check in with them about what those particular things mean as I'm communicating. Usually if I'm feeling calm and coming from a good place, it seems to work out that the communication's is more effective. Spend time as I'm speaking and communicating, checking in with how I'm feeling, check in about how they're feeling, watch their body language. They may say they're feeling fine or understanding it, but if their body language, is showing like still a lot of tension, maybe, the communication isn't as effective. So yeah, I like to do a lot of checking in with myself and the other person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say as long as there's peace in the valley, I just assume that the communication's been clear, right? But if there's any kind of disturbance in the force, I know I just shifted metaphors there, but as long as there's peace, I figure we're communicating well. But if there's any kind of energy disturbance, I just assume we didn't understand each other, or I wasn't expressing myself clearly enough at some point, and then I check in.
Yeah. I think we both said similar things, which is interesting. But you said it more from a standpoint of someone who's used to understanding and knowing what they're feeling and knowing not to ignore signs of how the other person might be feeling. I think some people who aren't as good at communication, like I'll put myself there. I'm getting much better, but I'm still sort of new at really recognizing and being honest about what I'm feeling, knowing what that means. So yeah, I think some people might be able to go slower, and then some people who are better at it might just be able to sense, yeah, like you said, disturbance in the force,
Mm-hmm.
These are not the droids you're looking for, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the opposite is true. Like if you say something to your partner and they storm off, there was some problem with the communication, right? There's something that needs to get discussed.
Right. And can I say more about that? That's
a
big sign that you shouldn't ignore too, because I think some people who aren't used to like maybe understanding their feelings, and they may just be stuck in this like kind of self-righteous thing. They may think, well, I said what I needed to say, and they're just storming off and they're really angry. But if you're still really kind of tense and angry, that's you checking in with yourself about what's really going on, So yeah, I think it's still important.
And how can you compassionately express your feelings and needs?
Yeah, how do I explain that? Do you want to take that one first? Yeah,
sure.
You take that one first.
So I think the reason we ask this question is because we're big proponents of NVC, which is compassionate communication or nonviolent communication, and we believe that the easiest way to keep communication clear and effective is to stay in a compassionate place and to really focus while feeling compassion for the other person on our feelings and needs and their feelings and needs, right? So that we're not getting caught up in, our more selfish kind of motivations, right? We're like staying centered in compassion. And I feel like what helps me a lot with that is to just first focus on having compassion for myself. Because if I'm struggling to communicate my feelings and needs, it's usually because somewhere inside I'm feeling hurt, right? So I just kind of go inside and I go, how am I feeling right now? what's this feeling, and what needs aren't being met that are triggering this feeling, Of course, you can have a positive feeling, right, and have needs that were met by a certain thing, but usually when I am alarmed, it's because there's some negative feeling that comes up and some needs that aren't being met. For instance, like I might feel hurt because my need for attention or affection hasn't been met. Like maybe, Dev gets really busy and doesn't notice that I'm talking to her in a certain moment, right? That I might get sad or hurt and go, what's going on with me? Why am I so sad? And then I'll be able to express my feelings and needs to her in a compassionate way, because I'm just looking at how I'm feeling. I'm not trying to blame her for her lack of attention,
Yeah, that's a really great answer. So I want to bounce off it. So I'm glad you answered first, because I'm going to go to maybe like the next step with it. So someone, say I was the one who was feeling sad, and because my needs for attention weren't being met. Now I think people can go past that step, like recognize their feeling initially, but not sort of kind of lean into that and understand that. They'll bypass it, and I'm certainly guilty of this, and then get into like comparing. This is sort of my hack for it. Get into like maybe comparing, judging, or criticizing. Like, oh, why aren't they paying attention? Why didn't, comparing, criticizing that, and then maybe saying like, well, I always pay attention when they need me, and then you get in this sort of defensive thing, and that's how sort of it escalates into a difficult situation. So I think if you're unable to always recognize your feelings or always stop and stay at that point and try to figure out what that means, and you feel yourself getting into comparing, criticizing, or judging either yourself or the other person, that's a good place to kind of stop it and reel it back. So to answer the question of how I communicate compassionately, like Sue, now that I understand the importance of recognizing my feelings, and now that I'm a proponent and, a studier of nonviolent communication, just as of it the last 2 years, recognize your feelings, recognize your needs if you can, and when you do, stay there. If you bypass that and jump to the next thing, compare, criticize, or judge, reel it back again, so that you can make sure that you're always communicating with compassionate, from a compassionate, perspective? Is that the? Mm-hmm. Like I want to compassionately say to the dog, please stop barking, we're videoing, so when you bark, it makes me feel anxious.
You feel anxious when he barks?
Right, because my need for order in the home isn't being met.
Mm-hmm. And peace.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I could start to compare, criticize, and judge him and say, like, other dogs don't behave that way. No.
Right. Okay, question number 3. Do you want to ask this one, or should I ask this one?
I'll ask this one. So, Sue, how do you communicate from the heart?
How do you not? That's my question.
That's Sue. Yeah.
I think, well, it's been my aspiration, I think, for my entire adult life to do all things, especially communicate from my heart. I think that for some people, this seems like a foreign kind of thing to communicate or do anything from their heart, but it comes really naturally to me, and I think that's part of why I was attracted to NVC, because the whole foundation of it is communicating from your heart. And I think when it comes to communicating with your partner, it's the most important, right? That you stay in this loving, heart-filled place whenever you stop to say something to them, because one of the things I noticed over the years in my relationships was that while you could say whatever you wanted to your partner, that would ring in their ears into the future, forever and ever. So for however long you were together, they would be hearing that hurtful thing you just said to them. And so as I, matured, I tried my best with partners to not say anything that was going to be hurtful in the future, right? Because there were some that I thought I'd be with forever, and so I didn't want them to be hearing that forever and being hurt by it. And I certainly had things that were said to me that rang in my ears forever, and couldn't really let go of until I wasn't with the person anymore. So I think that's why it's so important to come from the heart when you have a partner, especially if it's the person you're planning on being with for a while, Yeah,
I like that. So how I communicate from the heart, and again, it's like sort of a step back. It isn't a natural state for me, so I tend to be one who will jump right to defensiveness. And the way that I've learned to communicate from the heart, make sure I'm always doing that, is to use my heart. Whenever it's like I'm sort of using my head to think my way through whatever conflict it is and thinking all sorts of things, this goes back to the comparing, criticizing, and judging. It's like I know that I'm not coming from the heart. So I just sort of like let it go a little lower down and breathe and just feel what I'm feeling as I'm speaking. And then I know I'm communicating from the heart. So we'll think all sorts of things. I think if it's like it's starting with your head and you're just sort of thinking things. That's not to say you're not supposed to think before you speak, but I mean like sort of focusing on kind of like analyzing the other person and thinking what they might be doing wrong, or even like analyzing yourself and focusing on what you're doing wrong. You're not coming from the heart. You're not communicating from the heart. You just have to kind of open this loving space and almost let the love speak you as you're communicating with your partner, and that just makes for better, clearer, more beautiful communication. I feel like we're so lucky. I'm so lucky to have found this beautiful communicator and to have come to this relationship wanting to be a better communicator and getting to be a better communicator just through us like talking about things like this, among ourselves, and so happy that we're getting to share it with you guys too.
I love that. Let the love speak you. My baby's so profound. All right. Well, Hopeful Tribe, we hope you feel loved and hopeful until we see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.